Once upon a time, there was a dog, 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 a dog. Basically, a dog. And this dog, he was walking along the street one day. Well, not a street. It's more of a path going along the seafront where the sea meets the land. Most of the people who listen to this have probably never seen the sea. Most of you are in America. Most of America isn't beside the sea. Most of America is in the middle of some landmass. You've probably no idea what the sea looks like if you went up to the sea one day and saw it for the first time. Oh, you'd probably be terrified because you've noticed that the sea is gradually creeping up the beach. This huge body of water is slowly making its way up the beach. And for up to 6 hours, you might be absolutely terrified. Or else you turn up when the tide is going out. You see a beach for the first time and the tide is going out. And you think, oh, this whole landmass, this whole ice caps melting thing is nonsense. I can see the sea getting smaller and smaller with my naked eye by the minute. So I suppose you want to have a country where most people, most of the time, are not near the sea. You need to make sure that when people go to see the sea, they spend at least 7 hours there. They get the full picture. Or maybe they have some sort of centre where tourists who turn up and see the coast for the first time, as they're called here, an interpretive centre. Places of public interest. It's like a little museum and a gift shop, and you watch a video and some fella is telling you about the history of this place, and he'll tell you now. You're going to notice the first time you go down to the shoreline, you're going to notice the sea seems to be either getting bigger or getting smaller by the minute. Delete as appropriate. And here's what that's about. You should be made to watch that before you go to the... Well, I say made. You can't force people to watch something like that. It's not a fascist dictatorship where you make people watch a video the first time they visit the beach. So I suppose when you get on a plane, they make you watch a thing telling you what to do if you start falling from the sky. How to put on this terrifying mask that you don't really even want to think about, giving you nightmares. You're forced to watch this every single time. Oh, they go to great lengths to put on a movie on the plane that isn't going to terrify the general audience. They wouldn't show you a movie about a plane crash, for example. But no, before the movie comes on, you're expected to give your full attention to this live demonstration of what's going to happen if everything goes to shit during your flight and you all start falling from the sky, or what happens if all the air suddenly disappears. They don't explain why. They say in the event of there being no air to breathe, here's what you do. Now, how in the name of Christ are you supposed to enjoy a flight like that? There are people who enjoy flying. They'll get on the flight, they'll have a load of caffeine at the airport, and then they'll get into this tin can, hopped up on caffeine as if that's somehow going to make it even better. And they'll watch this thing. They'll watch some woman usually. Sometimes it's a man, but usually it's a woman. And that's no reflection on these women who are doing this. It's literally their job. And it's literally the law. They have to do this. They say, hello, I'd like your full and undivided attention, please, for this live horror movie that we're going to perform for you. And in case you can't see it, we're going to have someone standing further down the aisle so the people down near the back can see it better. And we'll put on a video as well of this that we made earlier. And then we're going to put on, we'll put on Toy Story, suitable for all audiences, just general audience, because we don't want to scare anyone. And this dog, wait, how did I get from the dog to that? Doesn't really matter, I suppose. The whole purpose of the dog thing is to get onto something without thinking about it. So I shouldn't be thinking about how did I get onto the dog thing from this. So I'm interested. How did I get onto the dog thing from this? Oh, yes, he was walking down the street, I said. And then I said there wasn't really a street. It's kind of a coastal pathway. It's not a street if it doesn't have vehicles on it. You might have pedestrian streets, I suppose. I suppose it's a street then if it has shops and things on it and it's in a built-up metropolitan area. If you have something down the country, like just outside this town, there's a path that goes along the countryside. And it's pretty much just a mud path. Goes up the coastline, You see all this green stuff on one side and this blue stuff on the other. If you're going northbound, the water is on the right and the green stuff is on the left. Although it's not that simple. In this weird town in which I live nowadays, there's a path. It goes from the harbour and it goes northbound along the coast. You go along it a bit and you follow the sea, but there's a river on the left that goes parallel to the sea, and then the river turns into a little lake at some point. Now, I've never really gone that far. I've just looked at this on Google Maps. It looks terrifying and ridiculous. It looks like that Florida Keys thing, which I've also never been to, but I've read about in Stephen King books. There's a Stephen King book where this fella, he's recovering from some injury and he goes to live in a summer house on the Florida Keys, which apparently it's basically an island in the sea but along the coast, and it's kind of separated. You can cross some bridge or something, but there's a troll at the bridge. I forget the exact details. There's some problem getting across the bridge to and from his Florida Keys residence. It's a bit like that down here. You have the sea on one side and you have the river on the other. And the river looks like it's going to dwindle off, but then all of a sudden then there's a little mini lake. A lake a few steps from the sea. I don't know if the lake is just a flood that's there sometimes and then goes away. A little lake forms during the wet season and then it sort of dries up. And during the wet season, everyone goes, oh Christ, there's water everywhere. Water everywhere. There's a place called Booherstown. I used to go through on the way to school. Train goes through this place on the South Dublin coastline. You have the sea on the right. It's the same sea that you see down here near where I live now. The sea is on the right, and then on the left at Booherstown, there's some sort of wildlife preservation area. A big empty place that's a swamp or something, or a marsh, and it floods during winter, fills up with water. And you get to a point when you're going to school, it's terrifying. You have this huge sea on one side that you realise, although it's called the Irish Sea, it makes it sound like a nice little local sea. It's part of a whole global body of water that spreads around the whole planet and could cheerfully drown us all in an instant if we dropped an extra few ice cubes into it, which apparently we're doing now. So there's that. And then on the left, there's this marsh, this bog, this place, which I found even more terrifying as a child, because I'd see cartoons and things where you hear about quicksand and swamps and marshes that you walk into and you start sinking and then you're dead. I've mentioned before, the school I went to till I was 6.5, there was a field in there that sometimes you'd be allowed to play it at lunchtime. And they tell us that side of the field there, just beside the entrance, you need to go around that. Don't go into that because that's a swamp. You walk into that, it's like quicksand, you'll just sink. And I had that drilled into me. Anyway, this Doug, he's walking along this path. Is my chair creaking? Can you hear my chair creaking? It's an old wooden, what you might consider an antique chair. Well, I consider an old spare chair from the attic that I'm using in lieu of an office chair in here, and you can't oil it because it's wood. You can't just oil wood, or can you? Can you oil wood? I don't know. I discovered the other day you can oil a hedge trimmers that appears to be not working, that appears to be dead. You drop a piece of oil onto it and it comes back to life straight away. It's like having some magical powers. I had this battery-powered hedge trimmer, so it was all locked up. Wouldn't move. Every time you press the button, it would go for half a second and then stop like it was struggling. Couldn't see anything blocking it. And I thought, wait a minute, do people oil these things? Maybe they do. Maybe you're supposed to oil these things. I'll try oiling these things. So I tried oiling these things. I sprayed some oil on it. Not a problem since. That's great. Whoever invented oil, lubrication oil, that's a fucking miraculous substance. Absolutely amazing. You could build these contraptions and just design them so they don't work at all. They're just shit. Knock-off shit. Imitation shit that doesn't do anything. Just tell people, before you use it for the first time, just put some oil on it. Get the cheapest, shittiest smartphone and they'd say, oh, just put some oil on it. It's magic. Now, I know you wouldn't put oil on a smartphone. You'd only put oil on a very old mechanical rotary dial telephone, and in that instance, you'd only put it on the dialing mechanism that spins. Maybe they have some equivalent to oil that works on electronic devices. I don't mean it lubricates it, but it's equally magical. It does something to it. Maybe some sort of magnet or something that you hold up to the phone. And now, don't hold a magnet up to your phone. That's just an example. The magnet is not a magical device, and you don't want to hold it up to anything that has data on it. Because from what I understand, if you hold a magnet up to anything that has data on it, it wipes it, it raises their whole hard drive, and you're fucked. It's exactly like one of those dusters you used to have in school. The blackboard would be covered in chalk in the form of words. People would be reading this, trying to make sense of it, and someone will come along with a duster and they just wipe this thing, and it wouldn't clean it. It would just turn into a mess of chalk dust. And then every couple of weeks, the teacher would send two kids out to the yard with this duster and say, just bang the two dusters together over the bins or something. Try not to make a mess. Just bang them together and that'll knock all the old dust off, and then it'll be absolutely perfect. While you're doing that, the teacher is in there washing the board or getting someone to wash the board with a damp cloth. And when you wash a blackboard with a damp cloth, the first thing you notice is that your fucking duster that you're using every day is the least effective thing possible to wipe a board. You see a teacher doing this, you think, why in the name of Christ doesn't he or she just use the cloth all the time instead of these dusters? You have a bucket of water ready, have a cloth. Have a supply of J cloths that you wash every week. You bring home and put them in the wash every week. Just dip it in water, wipe the board. Maybe you have to let it dry before you can write on it again, but that's fine. Whatever. So that's what the dog was doing. Into your head! Into your head! Into your head! If you're listening to this from the far side of the moon, perhaps you're in one of those Apollo things, those Apollo moon landing things, or those pre-moon landing Apollo things that just went around the back of the moon, used the moon's orbit as a slingshot to get back to Earth, like some sort of Sunday driver. Perhaps you're listening to that. Now I know that's in the past. We don't know. Time is complicated, so when you go traveling long distances in space, stuff happens with time that I don't understand, but I assume there may or may not be a possibility that you're listening to this in the past in relation to us. But it's your present. You're listening to this in the Apollo thing in the 1970s or 60s. To you, it's the present, and I'm in your future, if that's the case. And you probably understand all this science stuff more than I do. Or maybe you don't. Just have a bit of imagination. Imagine that it's possible that you're listening to this in one of the Apollo moon vessels going around the far side of the moon in the 1960s, and you're somehow hearing this because time is not relative, or time is relative, or whatever it is. But you do know there is a thing in quantum physics or something physics or some shit like that. There's something where if you travel far enough in space, something happens with time, and time is going at a different speed relatively back at home, and the people back at home are all dead by now. And you've only been in space for a couple of years, and decades have passed for the people at home. There's something like that. Now, maybe you might think that's not what happens with going around the moon. Say it is, especially if you're an astronaut on an Apollo space thing. You clearly have a bit of imagination and drive. You can imagine going to the moon. In fact, you're trying to go to the moon right now from your point of view. So have a bit of imagination. If it helps, pretend you're Tom Hanks in that movie. Is it Apollo 13 or 15, whatever it is? Maybe that hasn't happened yet from your point of view. Maybe you're on Apollo 8 or 7 or something. Well, there's going to be something happening involving, I think it's Apollo 13 or 15 or I don't know. I've read a couple of books about this lately and it's confusing me. There's been so many Apollos. Anyway, they made a movie out of it because the trip around to the back of the moon went a bit arseways. They didn't land. They had some trouble getting back to Earth. They had to use their lifeboat which a lifeboat in space is very different from a lifeboat in the sea, I can tell you. The lifeboat in space was, if I remember rightly, they used the moon landing pod. They used that as a lifeboat. They got into that and then stayed in that until they got back near to Earth, and then they got back into the other thing. They had been saving battery on the other thing, so they were able to get back into the other thing and land somehow. So you have that all ahead of you if you're on Apollo 7 or 8 or 9. Or you don't, because you're on Apollo 7 or 8 or 9, and it's going to be someone else's turn on the next ones. They don't keep sending you back. No. They give people turns, and NASA is run like a children's sporting event. Say, oh, everyone has to have a turn on the moon. Neil Armstrong went the last time. Someone else has to go this time. Someone else has to go the next time. We've sent someone to the moon who now has full experience of landing successfully on the moon and getting home. Oh no, next time we'll send someone else who's never been there. But everyone has to have their turn. Buzz Aldrin put his hand up in class and said, I want to go to the moon too. And we said, yes, even though there's been several people before you who now know more about going to the moon than any other human being on Earth. But no, we'll send you along, Buzz. We'll pair you up with this fella Neil Armstrong. He's very good. Now, we did crash a plane during training and nearly died. Either Buzz Aldrin or Neil Armstrong were all involved in some plane crash or something during training, or something like that. In the run-up to their space mission, there was some plane crash. Nearly died, but didn't. And if you nearly die, but you didn't, then you didn't die at all. You either die or you don't, so he didn't die at all. Either you die or you don't die. There's no nearly died. You nearly never won a race. Now, you wouldn't be winning a race if you died during this. So, nearly never lost a race, I suppose. Or what's the opposite? Oh, I don't know. We're overthinking this again, aren't we? Stop overthinking this. Well, if you're the man listening to this on the Apollo thing, you continue to overthink this. But even then, don't overthink this. Back on Earth, you have a whole room full of rocket scientists thinking for you. Every time you have a problem, you can just say, hello, Houston, we have a problem. And Houston just says, yeah, we're working on it. That's what they say in all these movies and books. They always tell Houston that they have a problem. And then they tell them they have another problem and another problem and another problem. And someone in Houston goes, yeah, we're working on it. And when they say we're working on it, I mean, there's 12 eggheads gathered around a table somewhere, sweating, making notes on note paper, and they've got a box that's full of a replica of everything that's available to the astronaut who's stuck in space. They say, what has he got up there? I say, well, he's got a paper cup exactly like this, which is of very little use to him because you can't drink out of a paper cup in space unless it's got a very good lid on it. He's got that, but maybe we can use that to build an escape pod. I'm not suggesting he uses we're using what tools he has available. So he has a paper cup up there. So we have a paper cup down here that's exactly the same. He has a biro. What colour is it, they'll say? Well, I think it's one of those big 4-colour pens. You have a button on it. You push down whichever colour you want. It usually has blue and black and red and green for some reason. People like to write in green. They have other colour ones now. They have an alternative version of that big biro pen. And then what else do they have? Well, they have a moon landing pod. Okay, do we have one of them down here? Yes, we have one of them down here. I can tell you it's in a lot better shape than the one they have up there. And someone will say, well, that defeats the purpose of this exercise. We want it to be in exactly the same shape as whatever they have up there. If they don't have a fully working moon landing pod up there, we shouldn't have a fully working moon landing pod down here. But if we figure out what he needs to do to get back to Earth safely, we need to be able to tell them, yeah, we did a run-through down here in Houston. We did a run-through and we figured out if we just get into this perfectly working moon landing pod, you can get home safely. The first thing the astronauts will say is, well, that's great, but we don't have a perfectly working moon landing pod. You need to tell us what to do with a non-perfectly working moon landing pod and a big 4-colour pen and a paper cup that we have up here for some reason. Whose idea was it to give us a paper cup? And then, of course, Houston will say, well, you'll find out soon enough when our genius boffins come up with an escape plan that you can build using just a big 4-colour biro and a paper cup that you have up there. So don't get all prejudgy about this. And the astronaut will say, I suppose you have a point there. You have a point there. Oh, the moon looks very good from here, they'll say. There's a moon rise where it starts at the horizon and it rises, goes over my head, and then it goes down the other side of whatever a horizon is in space. It's great. And then there's an Earth rise. We see the Earth rising behind the moon, goes up into the sky, then it goes across the sky, and then it goes down the other side of the sky, and then it's gone. And then it comes up at the other side of the sky again. Watching the Earth or the sun or the moon rise and set in the sky is exactly like as a child watching one of those escalators that they have in shopping malls. The steps come out of this crack at the bottom and they go all the way up to the top and then they disappear into the upstairs floor, and it's baffling. You've no idea where the steps go, how they get back down to the bottom of the escalator again. It's the most difficult to understand invention ever made, the escalator. Absolutely ridiculous. Well, not ridiculous because it works very well. But no one has any idea how that works. I would say if you're looking for a career now, you could do worse than to become a person who renovates and maintains escalators, because nobody has any clue how they even work. So you'll be in a unique position, you'll have whatever knowledge that you get to operate these things. Nobody has any idea how that works. Where do the steps go? How do the steps get back down to the bottom and emerge intact from under this crack at the bottom of the step? That's ridiculous. It'd be worth just training to become an escalator maintenance person just to find that out. It'd be like becoming a bishop just to find out the third secret of Fatima. Just out of curiosity, even if you don't want a career in that, you just have a bit of curiosity and to find out where do these steps go? Where the frigging hell? I suppose you could just look it up on Wikipedia or something. I've been on this planet for half a century. I've been wondering my whole life where escalator steps go, how they get back down to the bottom after they disappear into the top. It's never occurred to me to just Google it. And I'd be the first to tell someone, why don't you just Google it? But no, it's never occurred to me to just Google it. That's a bit silly. Well, it's not really all that silly. For the first 20-something years of my life, I'd never been on the internet, for one thing. Nearly half of my life, there was no Google for me to access. It might have existed in my teenage years, but I didn't have access. I got the internet in the year 2000. I got on the internet for the first time and sent my first email in the year 2000. I spent 3 days trying to set up dial-up internet in our house. Yeah, the phone line had it plugged into this PC, but I couldn't figure out how to connect to the internet. So I was on the verge of giving up and getting some sort of TV top set that you could plug a keyboard and a set into your TV and you use the internet that way. I was going to do that, but then I didn't. I didn't give up. I persevered and I got online and then I sent an email. It was absolutely great. I just don't remember what the first email I sent was. In fact, it was a work-related email. Well, an email regarding a job that I was about to get. So you wouldn't call that work-related, I suppose. It's none of your business what the content was. It's confidential. Private and confidential. Suffice to say, it wasn't trivial. I was sending a serious email about my future career. Well, what's now my past career, I suppose. If you want to be like that about it. Very unkind of you to think about it like that. Suffice to say, no, I got on the internet in the year 2000. So I was nearly halfway through my half century of life that I've now lived. And then the second half, I had Google. I had Yahoo. We eventually got apps. We didn't have apps for a long time. You had a computer, you plugged that into the phone line and you got internet on your computer and you were happy with that. It was a bit shit, to be perfectly honest. Because you go and get on a bus in the morning and you're back to listen to some stupid radio. You couldn't bring your computer with you unless you were some nerd who figured out laptops and stuff. I wasn't some nerd. I was an ordinary human being trying to come to grips with a changing world. Life was pointless in those days. Everything about life in those days was pointless. There was no way to do anything. No way, if you wanted to be part of any civilization at all, you had to go and join a club or something. Join some self-help group, so-called self-help group. The only proper self-help group is one that's just you. That's a self-help group. If you're going down to some club and going, oh, we're going to form a self-help group. Well, what is that? You're helping each other then. So unless it's something where you go in and you all sit in separate boxes and you don't talk to each other, you just sit back to back and work on your own shit on a computer or something. Like one of those business incubation centers where everyone goes in and you rent a desk there, but you're in some office. But it's not your office, it's a rented desk in an office. And everyone's working on their own shit and nothing is anyone else's business because you're all your own individual startups. A real self-help group. You don't talk to each other, you each work on your own shit. Maybe in a library. You sit around the table and everyone takes out a reference book and reads it to themselves quietly, and then maybe they have a cup of tea with each other afterwards, but there's no helping each other because that's not self-help. It is not. It is not.
Are you going into your head?
Now, I did notice when I was talking about the safety demonstration on the aeroplane, I talked about another staff member placed further down the plane, and I think I said something like further down the aisle. And when I was listening back to that, I thought later on in the same segment I'm talking about oil on the hedge trimmers. That's going to cause confusion because they both sound like I'm saying oil. I say oil and then oil. The first one is AISLE, oil. I have difficulty saying that word in a... Well, I don't know. Am I saying it properly? It is oil, surely. That's how it's pronounced. And oil, OIL, is pronounced oil. And when I say them, they both sound exactly the same. But just for clarification, if I'm talking about it in the context of a commercial air flight, I'm talking about oil as in AISLE, the space that you walk down the centre of the plane. A distributor walkway for getting down to the whatever part of the plane you're trying to get to. And then when I'm talking about oil in the context of gardening implements and stuff that's happening at home, then I'm talking about lubrication oil. Now, of course, there's different things I could be talking about at home. They use different types of lubrication oil. The stuff you use when cooking, the lubrication oil that we use when cooking is very, very, very different from whatever you put in the hedge trimmers. At least I presume it is it? Maybe it's not. Maybe they're just calling all these things oil and putting different brands on them to say, this is oil for your hedge trimmers. This is oil for your fried eggs. This is oil that you put in the thing that you use to shave your head. This is oil that you use in your door hinges. It all has different names on it. It's probably all the same stuff, is it? It probably is. It probably all just comes from stuff that's buried under the coal in the bottom of the sea. Well, anyway, when I'm talking about stuff like that, I'm usually talking about lubrication oil. But if I'm talking about the aeroplane and I say oil, I'm very unlikely to be talking about lubrication oil on the aeroplane because I'm not an aircraft maintenance technician. I'm not even on a plane. I'm just talking about it in my spare room here. So why would I be using oil there? So no, when I was talking about the plane, I was talking about oil, AISLE, as in the corridor that runs down the centre of the passenger area of the plane. A so-called corridor that you're supposed to squeeze down. You have 800 people jammed into this tin can and they put a little laneway down the middle. It's like that when you're in a little town down the country and they build a motorway that comes within about 10 miles of the town but no closer. I lived in a town like that. For many years I lived in a Thai. They built a motorway that went somewhere vaguely near the town but not near enough. And then eventually they built the road that connects over to the town. And even that didn't connect over properly to the town. It connected to one end of it. And then years later, after I left, they built a road that connects from the connector road and goes around the edge of the town so you can get to the other parts of town that you want to get to without being jammed behind some tractors in the main street. I lived in a town that had tractors in the main street, traffic jams of tractors in the main street. Where they were going, I don't know. They did have the ploughing championships during the first few years that I lived there. But later on they didn't, and there were still tractors. Maybe they were farming, I don't know. There was a lot of farmland outside that town now that I think about it. And that's where they had the ploughing championships, which I discussed many times in the vintage era of this program. I discussed the ploughing championships coming to Athy and other nearby towns. I don't live in the Thai anymore. We don't have ploughing championships in this part of the country because it's jammed in between the coastline and a huge mountain range. There's nowhere to be ploughing here. Why would you plough? No, wouldn't want it anyway. It's all over one side of the country. The whole point of the ploughing championships is that it's a joint trade show. People come to it from all over the country. They don't travel in their tractors usually. Well, wait a minute. There is a ploughing championships competition involved, but the main part of it is the trade show people come from. So I presume the competitors come in their tractors. Surely they don't fold up their tractors and put them in the back of their car or something. I don't know. How do you transport a tractor across the country? There's some little town in the middle of the country that doesn't even have a motorway going within 10 miles of it. I don't know. Surely they're not just all driving them 150 miles from the arse end of nowhere to the other arse end of nowhere. Does it really matter? Well, it matters to whoever is organising the logistics of this. Well, it shouldn't matter to us. We're not organising the logistics of this. But I could say the same thing about the aeroplane. It doesn't matter to us. We're not organising the logistics of how the corridor runs down the middle of the plane and distributes the passengers in an effective and efficient manner and provides access, because we're not designing that. But it still affects us. Now, we don't think too much about lubricating the plane because we don't see the results of that. Even though it's probably very important, a plane that runs out of oil is probably a huge, huge problem. But we don't see it. I presume we don't. They haven't been on the plane in several years. I hope at this stage they don't have something on the screen in front of each seat where you can go in and not only see the navigation of where the flight is, where we are in the sky, but also see the oil levels. I hope they're not doing that. The OIL level. Oh, Christ. I've just said that when I'm talking about planes and say oil, you can assume I mean AISLE. But now I'm talking about the oil levels in the engines on the plane. I just assume that you're reasonably intelligent about these things, or else if you're not, it doesn't really matter. You'll just be watching Toy Story anyway. I think there's a new Toy Story movie coming out. Toy Story 5 or 6 or whatever it is. They added the number onto the previous one. I haven't seen it and I have no reason to see it. Although I thought the same thing about the last 4 Harry Potter movies, which I saw in the cinema. Well, no, I don't think I have any reason that I'll be forced to go and see the new Toy Story movie. But I presume what happens is they get out of the box again, this toy box. They come alive as they do at night. They start causing trouble. This child who's... Wait a minute, is the child grown up yet? This franchise is about 25 years old. Surely to Christ they don't still have the same kid and just say, oh, it's a cartoon. Cartoons never grow up. It's not a cartoon. Firstly, the toys won't have grown up, but surely the child will have grown up. I know children in cartoons often don't grow up. The children in The Simpsons have been the same age for 30 years. But you have to provide contrast, because if you're going to have toys who don't grow up, but the child is also not growing up, the fact that the toys are not growing up will just be not noticeable because there'll be no contrast against the child who is growing up. So at least if it's not necessarily growing up at a normal rate into an adult, maybe they could have it advancing a few months after each sequel. The wooden toy probably has wood lice or something. They made a spin-off a couple of years ago about the toy in it who looks like an astronaut or something. He's some kind of superhero, flies planes or space rockets or something. They made a movie spin-off about that character, but it wasn't about the toy. It was about the fictional movie and the fictional movie character on which that toy was based in the fictional world. And parents were very annoyed. They said, that's not about the toy at all. Completely different thing. What's the fella's name? Look a bit like the dad out of American Dad, but in the astronaut suit. I have an issue with these astronaut suits. I say I have an issue. It doesn't affect me. But if I was an astronaut, I would have an issue with that. You're going around in these suits. If you're going around in a business suit and a toy, I presume NASA, they're literally rocket scientists. They can find some way to make an astronaut spacesuit that looks more like a business suit and a toy, surely, and have some discreet air thing around your head. Maybe have a glass helmet, very see-through helmet. If astronauts were wearing those instead of the stupid, ridiculous things that look like that idiot out of Toy Story, who's a double fictional character, a toy based on a fictional movie character, they're turning up in schools, giving a speech to the kids about that time they went to the International Space Station. Maybe they're not wearing the spacesuits into the classroom, but they're certainly wearing them in the video footage that the children see, and the children are seeing this. And they're not going to take the astronaut seriously at all. If that astronaut was in a proper business suit, looked like an adult with a proper job and a profession who knew stuff, the children might be motivated to ask more serious and interesting questions than how do you go pee-pee in space. As you see football, soccer players, they turn up at events, they're wearing a suit and tie. They're not wearing their weird pants and short trousers and running shoes and white socks, whatever it is they wear on the football field. What do footballers wear on the football field? I don't know, because I don't watch sport. But I do know as they turn up at press conferences, they're wearing a suit and tie, like a normal adult with a job. They take it very seriously because they're being paid a lot of money. They should take it very seriously. I don't know if astronauts are paid a lot of money, but they do have a serious job, serious level of responsibility. You used to see them getting on the space shuttle. They showed them walking along in their weird suits, carrying their helmet under their arm, like it's a ghost in a ghost cartoon that carries its own head. There used to be a children's program called Rentaghost in the 1980s. There was a ghost who was a dead, beheaded fella. I think he used to carry his head around under his arm. And people used to always do that in cartoons and things. Headless ghosts would carry their head under their arm. That's what you look like when you're a space astronaut, getting onto this space shuttle or whatever they use now instead of a space shuttle. You're walking along, you're wearing this weird suit, and you have your helmet under your arm. You look like a headless ghost. Do you expect children to take you seriously? No, they'll never take you seriously at all. Never, ever, ever take you seriously. Can you imagine if people got on planes doing that? No. First thing you know is when you're sitting on the plane on the tarmac, you see the pilots getting on the plane. They walk up to the cockpit. They're dressed immaculately. Immaculately. They're dressed like they're the president or something, or they're dressed like they're a billionaire who runs half the world and has great responsibilities. They look like they run Amazon or something. They're wearing a tie and a suit. They're very immaculately dressed. They spend half of their spare time ironing. I don't know how they do that, because these people, they spend half of their working life in hotels. When you go somewhere, half of the time when you're going somewhere for work and you're driving the plane, the destination is somewhere that you don't live in, so you have to go to a hotel somewhere. How are they ironing everything? I know they have trouser presses in hotel rooms. They don't have ironing facilities, surely, do they? Or maybe they do, I don't know. You're supposed to keep your one shirt crisp for the return journey. Maybe if you change straight out of it the minute you get out of the airport. Put on your pajamas on the bus. I don't know. I couldn't keep a shirt. I used to have a job where I had to wear a shirt and tie. I tell you, you'd be damn sure the Christ is hell that shirt was wrecked before I even got home every evening. I was drenched in sweat for one thing. My first job, I was the runner. I was the office junior and the runner in a busy company. I used to go out several times a day to the bank, run around doing things. Then at the end of the day on my way home, I'd run up to the general post office with a bag of post and then run down to the train. I was drenched in sweat every day. There was no reusing a shirt the next day, I can tell you. It was a different shirt every single day, except weekends, because it didn't work on weekends. That was my first introduction to the world of office work. I learned that there's a lot of laundry involved. A lot of laundry. Do you want to be doing laundry every day if you're driving a plane? I certainly wouldn't. Maybe they have people who do that for them. These low-cost budget airlines, I find it very unlikely that they'd be having these shirts cleaned for these people and ironed. They say, here's your shirt back just in time for your return flight. We've ironed it, we've folded it immaculately. We've used starch. What's starch? I hear about starch sometimes. I think it's something people used to use when they were washing things. Maybe they still do. I've never done proper laundry. Laundry to me is you go out to the shed with a pile of clothes, you separate the stuff that your wife doesn't want you to destroy, and you put that in a separate load. And then you get these laundry pods. You put one in the wash with it. You turn the dial and you put it on. And then you take it out. Then you put it in the tumble dryer. And then you bring it in and you fold it somewhat. And then you put it in the wardrobe. That's laundry. Apparently to some people, laundry has a whole big rigmarole of using starch and ironing things and pressing things. I don't know. I don't wear shirts at all. I wear t-shirts all day, every day. I go out, I wear a trouser denim. If I'm staying in, I wear pajama bottoms or something similar. Well, however convenient. There's more to life than dressing up. You don't dress up for everything. No, you do not. You absolutely, well, I don't. Maybe you do. Maybe you have things you have to go to and you have to get dressed up for. Maybe you're going to Mass today. Are you going to Mass today? Today's Saturday. Maybe you're going to 7 p.m. Mass, like we used to when we were teenagers. We go to 7 p.m. Mass on a Saturday, and that was your obligations towards the Supreme Being done for another week. You get on with your life. That was great when they brought that in. They brought it in, I think maybe the 80s, they said. If you go to Mass anytime after 6:30 on a Saturday evening, and that counts as a Sunday, you can pretend it's Sunday, because it's always 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning somewhere. Alcoholics like to say it's 5 p.m. somewhere while they're having a drink at 5 a.m. Well, it's 11 a.m. on a Sunday morning somewhere, not necessarily on a Tuesday. On a Tuesday, it's unlikely to be 11 a.m. on a Sunday somewhere. But at 7 p.m., for example, on a Saturday evening, it's definitely 7 a.m. somewhere on a Sunday. I suppose there's the international dateline. I'm not considering if you're living the part of the world that's 12 hours ahead of everyone else. I don't know how the international dateline works, but let's say you're in the part of the world that gets there first. You're always the first people to celebrate New Year's Day. If you live there and you're going, oh, I want to go to Mass on Saturday evening because it's 7 a.m. on a Sunday somewhere in the world. Well, it isn't, because you're ahead of everyone else. You have to wait until it's actually Sunday in your part of the world. I suppose you get a raw deal then. Well, take it up with the Supreme Being if you don't like living in an advanced time zone where there's nobody later. So what? Stop rushing to get your Sunday over with on a Saturday evening. Relax. You're already 12 hours ahead of everyone else. You don't want to be another 12 hours. You're slipping into another time stream. You'll have a different reality. That's how we end up with things like the Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect, you may or may not be aware of. It's an alleged phenomenon whereby people claim that when Nelson Mandela died, they thought, oh, I could have sworn he died several years ago. I have a clear memory of it being reported that he had died, and I remember the funeral on TV and everything. And they say, oh, it must be still being some change in the timeline. We've all switched over to another timeline. You're going to cause that. If you're in one of these time zones where you're the first people to reach midnight and you still want a situation whereby you can go to Sunday morning Mass on a Saturday evening, have a bit of patience, for Christ's sake. Stop trying to get your whole life over with before it's even started.
Into your head.
If you ever have an opportunity to cross the Irish Sea on a dinghy, I would snap that up straight away, because the alternative is possibly drowning. You don't want to drown. If you're being offered a dinghy or an inflatable life craft of any kind, there's a good chance you're in some terrible situation. Perhaps you're in a plane that's about to land on water. They say land on water, it's not really landing. For one thing, well, I know there is land under the sea. The sea is as much land as anywhere else. Sea is just land that's below sea level. It's at a lower level than the rest of the place, so it gets wet quicker. It tends to fill up with water and get wet and forms puddles. Well, that's not what I'm getting at here. If you ever have an opportunity to travel in a rubber dinghy or life craft of any kind, whether you want to or not, I know you probably have no bursting desire to experience Have I done this before? I've done this before. This is fucking ridiculous. I've done this before. I've started a thing saying if you ever have an opportunity to travel in a lifeboat, snap that up straight away. That's ridiculous. Why is my brain the same thing more than once in a fucking cable television channel? No, brain, come up with something new. That's ridiculous. You have that and you have the thing about the dog. It's getting very repetitive. I mean, it was an original thought the first time you did it. But that was, I think, less than a year ago. You can't just come up with the same original thought more than once. It's the second time, it's not an original thought. It's not. Very unoriginal, very derivative of a previous thing you've thought in your brain. I suppose it still counts as an original thought somewhat if you haven't expressed the thought somewhere. But in this case, no, I've definitely expressed that thought somewhere on this podcast. And I thought I was coming up with an original thing there. No, it's ridiculous. This thing is a lot harder than I thought, before I started all this. I've done, something like 879 episodes of this. And when I started off, absolutely appalling, dreadful shit. And I feel like I should be fined for having them on the internet. It's appalling. There's limited space on the internet. There's only so much room on this thing. Someday it's going to fill up. And then people are going to go, where are we going to put everything? We're running out of space for everything. There's data centers holding this shit somewhere. There's probably 12 data centers around the world containing copies of this shit. In fact, it goes into a data center before I even start editing and publishing it, because I save these raw recordings to Dropbox, so that goes somewhere. Then it goes somewhere else to be processed from Dropbox. Then it makes a new copy and copies that back into Dropbox. So it goes through Dropbox, then Auphonic, the cloud sound processing service. It goes through Auphonic, so that's another server somewhere, and then it copies that back to Dropbox. So twice as much space taken up on Dropbox by these things. Then it goes onto my computer in the other room, and then it backs up to Google somewhere, backs up to Google Drive. So that's another farm of machinery filling up with shit. And that's before I've even published anything or even edited it. What in the name of Christ is wrong with us? What are we doing as a society? Well, it's not really a society. There isn't a society of people making it into your head. No. I mean, as an overall society, people in general, we're sitting here, we're making this so-called content. Do I sound content? No, I don't sound content at all. I suppose I could. If I had some basic acting skills, I could sound content and say, oh, this is great, I'm very content. If you're saying I'm content, that's not really acting, is it? No. As I say, show us, don't tell us. You're watching a drama series on the TV, and they say, oh, and then this fella, he goes into a depression, and then they just have a narrator saying, oh, he goes into a depression. No, that's not acting. Show us, don't tell us. Show the fella looking depressed. Show a close-up of this fella I want to literally see the corners of his mouth drooping, and then we'll have a cliffhanger. We go, wait, is he having a stroke? Or is he having a stroke, or is he just very sad? And then when we find out after the cliffhanger that he's very sad, we say, is it just very sad or is it clinical depression? And that's probably 2 or 3 episodes out of a 10-week online streaming thing. So you have to give us something to think about and work with. You don't just have a narrator go, yeah, he was sad and it wasn't a stroke incidentally. No. And then, of course, during the commercial break, you put in the public service thing about spotting the signs of a stroke. If you see someone with the corners of their mouth drooping, ask, has this person got genuine reasons to be sad at the moment? Is there any obvious reason they would suddenly become very sad? Or is it possible that the corners of their mouth are drooping? Especially if they're drooping on just one side and their ear is drooping as well and their eye is drooping on one side and all of the skin on one side of their head is dropping down and then their arm is just dropping down and then they're falling over because their left leg stops working as well and their left foot isn't working. Their left foot is no longer able to hold a shoe on. Is that a thing? I know us men, we get shoes, and there's only one type of shoe really. It's a thing that you put your foot into You tie it up and there's no way that's going to fall off. If you have a stroke and one side of your body stops working and your foot stops working, all the muscles in your feet stop working, so all the muscles relax. Does that mean your shoe falls off for some types of shoe? Especially the type of shoe women wear. Because women like to wear very uncomfortable shoes sometimes. And so if you're having a stroke where one of your feet stops working, that foot, the muscles possibly are working all the time to hold that shoe on, keep it in position, and all those muscles suddenly relax, that shoe might fall off. And then what? Well, you're not going to need the shoe. If you're hopefully temporarily paralyzed all the way down the left side of your body, you're not going to need the left shoe for a while. Well, except for hygiene, I suppose. Actually, now that I think about it, you might want to keep that shoe on. Don't use elastic bands, because that might F up your circulation. Get someone medical to maybe tape it on with bandages, or else get a normal proper shoe that can hold itself on, and it's shoelaces or something, or buckles. The same with glasses. Have glasses where you don't have to keep your ears clenched or in a certain position or tensed up for the glasses to stay on. No, you're going to be having a stroke. The last thing you need is your glasses falling off as well. Nobody there to pick them up for you. I've had glasses fall off. It's not convenient. I can barely see as it is. When my glasses fall off in public and I can't find them, it's a problem. Now you might think, well, just ask someone to pick up your glasses. I've been in that situation, I'll have you know. Or have I? Wait. Oh no, wait, that was my bus ticket. No, I was going to say I've been getting on a bus, a busy bus, a big queue, trying to board as quickly as possible. And then I found that I've dropped my glasses. I'm standing in front of the driver, approaching the ticket machine, and dropped my glasses. And my glasses are down either on the step or down on the ground outside. I had to ask the people behind me to please look for it. But no, I'm misremembering that. That was my bus ticket, I think. Yes, it was my bus ticket. My bus ticket. Now, I do have free travel. I have a free travel pass. But if you lose that, it's not free anymore, I can tell you. You don't want to lose that. And that's even worse than losing your glasses. Because the driver isn't going to go, oh, you need your glasses to board this bus, sir. You have to go back and get your glasses, or ask someone to lend you a pair of glasses. You can't be getting on this bus without glasses. If he does say that, he's probably misunderstood. Drivers, sometimes they don't really understand people with disabilities. You might think, oh no, you're clearly vision impaired. You need to be wearing your glasses at the very least. No, they don't say that. But if a road driver who hasn't been properly trained in handling people with disabilities might sometimes say that. He'd say, oh no, you can't get on here till you find your glasses. Or you can at least, if you have the proper diplomatic skills and communication skills, you can explain to him that, no, you've misunderstood. And with all due respect, if you don't understand why you're wrong here, please ask your employer for additional training. But no, if you lose your free travel pass, your ticket, you're already going on there expecting free travel. It's very, very greedy of me. If I get on there and say, oh no, I've dropped my free pass, it's down on the ground outside there somewhere, I can't expect them to just go, no, go ahead and get on, fuck it. Just fuck it. We'll just let all rules and regulations and laws and payment systems, we'll just forget everything because you dropped your pass on the ground. Yeah, fuck it, go ahead. Just get on, go ahead and fuck it. No, they don't say that. Well, some of them are very nice and they probably would let you just go ahead, don't worry about it, because they know you for one thing. Say, oh, I know that fucking idiot. He's not going to pay anyway. He doesn't have to pay. He's lost his ticket. Of course, when they do that, an unannounced inspector gets on 5 minutes later and goes up to the driver and says, there's a fella upstairs who's travelling with no ticket and no bus pass. You're sacked, driver. And then the driver gets sacked. He doesn't get a free bus pass, I can tell you. Because you don't get a free bus pass just for being unemployed. You have to be disabled or old. So that's a bit unfair then. So what are you going to do? Hope to Christ you don't miss your stop.